And this is kind of our very basic entry level into the conferencing product line. Again, it's meant to be great sound quality, fast and easy to set up. There's just a handful of components. And if you need chain with cables, do that. They daisy chain with our DCS LAN cables work port. That gets you access to control it and set it up. There's 8 XLR outputs for feeds for things like press, maybe for audio distribution and so forth. And I have 2 XLR inputs. These could be a place, maybe you want to bring a wireless mic in or something else to get it into the system to play in the system. We'll note that this input here can also be used as an EEM or an emergency evacuation messaging input, meaning I could feed the audio input, for instance, from my fire alarm system and take a contact closure. So when the fire alarm goes off, the contact closure shuts and shunts all of the audio in the devices and plays only whatever audio is coming into that input there, okay? There's a browser-based interface baked into the thing, so you can dial into it through that network port and have complete setup. This includes assigning seat numbers and names to the units, which is really a cool feature because once we set all these things out, wouldn't it be great to know that, you know, Chris, me, I'm sitting here, or we got whoever sitting in these seats, so it makes it much easier to operate. You can set up operating modes, you can turn microphones on and off, you can set speaker lists and request lists. So this is a great interface to have. It could be run from an iPad. If you want to have a wireless connection to your network, you could run this all from an iPad. I'll stop and take just a moment to say that much of the configuration for an entire system can be done right from the front of the unit with this LCD display and I always want to call it a joystick. It's not. The buttons on the front. Okay. The conference units themselves. The portable units are the 5980p. They have touch button technology with a request to speak button with an LED that turns red or green. There's also a configurable button with LED. There's a 3.5 millimeter jack volume control as well on the side. This is for use for assisted listening or for language interpretation. There's a channel selector on the unit that allows us to select what language we're listening to if we're using that. The base here has a lockable XLR, so when you plug in the gooseneck microphone, if it's an installed situation, you would probably lock that thing down. If it's portable, you wouldn't because you're always pulling this, you're probably disassembling it, reassembling it every time. Is that my Siri? She thinks I call on her all the time. There's an integrated loudspeaker, of course, because that's what helps make a conference system work. And 2 DCS LAN connectors because this is a loop-through system. It just daisy chains one to the next, to the next, to the next. This DCS LAN is very robust. There's overlays for the conference units. It can be a chairman, an interpreter, a delegate speak with mute, and then a delegate with speak only. Okay, that's this bottom one here is the speak only. The speak with mute is here. You would use this in the event that you have your microphone on, and then you would press the side button here is like a cough switch. You could press it to mute, and it would just quickly mute your microphone, but then turn it back on. If you want to install these units, you can install the portable units if you want. There's ways to install them, but you can also use the flush mount stuff. So this is the 5900, and all the brains and smarts are in this unit here. You can see there's my cat connectors where I daisy chain on through. You can kind of see this in this picture here as well. You can also see that my loudspeaker component is separate. So now we have a separate loudspeaker component that can be kind of placed wherever you need it, if you need it. This device can be automatically configured as chairman or delegate based on what button overlay goes on. So it's kind of a cool advancement in technology. There are button overlays, loudspeaker and microphones, all that stuff sold separately, kind of mentioned. So the faceplate, once you get that thing installed, you got to put the faceplate on it. And the 5921F is for speech only. This is popular like in the corporate world where They want to have this technology, but they don't need extra buttons and everything. They just need a way to turn their microphone on and off. So this is popular here. If you need speech and interpretation, you use this faceplate, the 5981F, and this adds interpretation or channel selection. It has all of the overlays that then you would apply over this here. As expected, you can use any Shure gooseneck that you want, as long as it's compatible with this system. We do have some variants here, guys. These are all GM series goosenecks that work with 5900. And of interest is this guy here on the end, the mini shotgun. Even though this picture makes it looks like a major shotgun, it's actually very small. If you look around scattered across, you'll see the mini shotguns here. It's the one I'm using on this mic, in fact, or on this conference unit, in fact. But they're all available for 5900. Let's go. Every once in a while, my computer seems to take a siesta. I'll bet you PowerPoint crashes now because Microsoft is wonderful. The next bit, the next slide, we'll just keep going here like we are going. Is talking about cabling. I talked about the DCS LAN cabling that just passes through. PowerPoint just crashed. This is proprietary cabling. It's a different gauge. It's shielded. And the requirement is that we want you to use that patch, those patch cables in between all the units. I gotta find where I was. Here we are, I think. No. Yep. How about now? Look at that. These patch cables, it's not that we just want to you buy them from us and make money and all that kind of stuff. Every single one of these cables is swept. Every single one. This is typical Shure fashion. Every single cable is individually packaged. So it's going to be more expensive than just what you're going to buy off the shelf from whatever, Fry's or Monoprice or whatever. And we often get the question, why can't my guys just make these in the field? Why can't they just terminate them in the field? The reason is 99% of the time when there is an issue, and they're gremlins, they don't always show up like it just doesn't work or it works. There's just weird gremlins that happen when these things are terminated incorrectly, and even they can even look like they're correct. So what happens is you call support. I've got a dead unit. I've got something going on here. Weird in my system. The first question they're going to ask you is, did you use our cable? And if you say no, chances are they're probably going to ask to send you, FedEx, a pile of cables and connect up the whole system with our cables. And again, 99% of the time, everything seems to work. So use our jumper patch cables. Install wire, we can give you the spec for that. Give you the install spec. We just ask you to terminate install wire to female type jacks. This is much easier to terminate, and everything still needs to be galvanic connections all the way through. So even if you want to terminate to a patch base somewhere in your machine room or something like that, everything needs to be shielded all the way through in order for this system to work. We have piles of accessories that help whether you're a rental or it's an install. Junction boxes, power inserters when you start to run out of power on long lines or signals need to be refreshed with a signal repeater. We can do LAN switching if we need room linking between like dividable, combinable ballrooms. We have extra audio output units for even more options for audio outputs, redundant controllers, even headphones. So we would love for you to buy our real nice, high-end, expensive headphones, but the reality is we also have very inexpensive headphones because sometimes these systems that use these things, you know, it's kind of like you get on the plane and they start handing out headphones and they never expect them to come back. That's almost like these kind of headphones. Even a digital IR system. So some of you may not know that we actually have had for quite some time an IR system, and it's quite robust. It sounds great. It tends to have better coverage. Frankly, it's one of the best sounding and operating IR systems out there. In this situation, we've got our DCS LAN. Oop, turn my pin back on here. We have our DCS LAN, so that's coming out of one of those 4 LAN ports here. We have another LAN port feeding 2 interpreter consoles, and then analog outputs of this thing heading out to our digital IR system. Again, has been out there for a while. Any questions on that? I'm going to move on to something even more exciting. Microflex Complete Wireless. So this is MXCW. We just launched this product in February, I think, at ISE. This is just a response. Everyone said, sure, as a wireless company, you know, and you make microphones. Why can't we make one of these things wireless? Well, your prayers have been answered in this case. It's secure. It's AES encryption. Even the browsers has login capabilities with passwords. Simple and easy to set up. We often have contests to see how fast you could get something set up. Literally out of the box, you plug in the access point. It is a PoE device, and we'll get there in a second. Then you grab a conference unit, which has multifunction uses. They're all the same conference units. And you plug the battery in, turn the thing on, and you're up and running, probably in seconds. It's scalable. I can have up to 125 participants connected to a single access point. It is self-managed RF. This is great because we just want to set the thing up and not think about it anymore, right? We want it to scan its environment and move to new clean channels on its own. The batteries on these units, actually, they're running even more than 11 hours, depending upon how you have your system configured. So 11 hours is a rough estimate. You can get, I've seen them going up to 13 on some units. And it's interoperable, meaning it's a Dante unit by nature. The access point is, that's where all the audio comes to and leaves from, but there's even analog connectivity right on the unit itself. So just a handful of components here: the access point, the conference unit, batteries, battery charger, and some microphones, but let's look at that in more detail. That access point, as I mentioned already, I can have up to 125 conference units connected. It does operate in 5 gig and 2.4, but it has automatic frequency coordination. And this interference and detection and avoidance thing is actually something, you know, we've deployed already in products like Axient Digital and GLXD Advanced and some other products. It has been probably hopping around this whole time, and we wouldn't even notice. AES 128-bit encryption. This is typically a well-accepted thing, so somebody else can't just listen in on this audio stream. I'd mentioned there's 1 analog in, 1 analog out. But there's 10 Dante input channels and 10 Dante output channels as well. So if I wanted to add some extra Dante I/O somewhere to get more audio sources into the system, great, no problem. It's actually got like a little Dante mixer on board. There's a built-in LCD display that allows you to completely set up and configure the thing to probably about 80 or 90% right on the front. So if you're a rental stager, you want to do a setup and not even break out a computer to interface with it to set it up, you can set the whole thing up and how it works right from that display screen. But if you want extra control or viewing options, you can access the embedded web GUI that's on board. There is one single network connection, like many of our products. It's PoE, Dante, and audio and control that happens over that one single connection. The MXC 640 it can be multiple things, right? It can be a chairman, a delegate, a listener, or an ambient. Listener is a way you could put it's a participant role you can put the conference unit into that literally only allows the speaker to work. So you could pull the microphone off and just have it distributed like a loudspeaker somewhere to get audio into a space. And an ambient is a role that you would set one in that allows you to leave the microphone on so that even when everyone's microphones are turned off, if I'm streaming or if I'm in the middle of a call or something, the far end doesn't think we just hung up on them or that we have audio problems. An ambient mic is still in the room operating where they can hear that something's going on. Okay? The touchscreen display offers configuration and control and meeting information right from there. There's a built-in loudspeaker, of course, with program audio available. It also offers an NFC card slot, which is kind of cool because now we can have participant identification by inserting that NFC card. There's a micro USB on the back. You can use that to charge the battery externally in the event that your meetings run longer than 12 hours. God bless you if that's the case. 5mm TRRS connection on the back as well. That is for a cool thing called remote participant. Allows you to connect up a phone right there and kind of bridge them into your conference. We'll get into that in just a second. There's 2 additional 3.5mm headphone jacks on either end with a volume control. That allows you to plug in a set of headphones, and now again you can use that for assisted listening or interpretation, so you can turn that volume up and down on your headphones. The network charging station accommodates 10 total batteries, and it gives you a readout on the front, kind of 5 LED status, gives you a quick look at how well a battery might be charged. There's an integrated power supply. It's temperature controlled. There is network remote monitoring, so if you make this part of your network, you can actually look at the battery health status and everything while the thing's docked. There's a storage mode too, which is kind of nice. That's all done by the actual charger. It can be tabletop, rack, or wall mounted. In about an hour and a half, you get 50%, and then a total of 4 hours, you get 100% charge on the battery. Speaking of the battery, this is a 3-cell lithium ion, and like I said, we're depending upon, if you have your screen display all the way up as far as the brightness is concerned, and you're talking into your microphone all day long, you're going to get about 11 hours of runtime. On the other hand, if you dim down or put into dark mode and you're actually turning off your microphone and it's not being activated as much, you're going to get more like 13, 14 hours worth of use out of a unit, okay? There is a battery included with every MXC 640 conference unit. So there's no need to buy a separate line item with batteries. One comes with the thing. Maybe you do want to buy a spare battery or 2 to have laying around that's charged just in case. So you could do that if you'd like, but no need to buy an extra one for the unit. There's also remote monitoring here. It's reported in hours and minutes. And then on the front, you'll notice everybody's got a battery nearby probably. Oh, no, we didn't pull the batteries out of the MXC units. But you can grab one of the batteries. You can notice you push the button on the side, and it gives you a quick readout of how much time is left on there. Not how much time, but how much percentage is left. There is a readout, however, on the MXC 40 display that tells you how much time is left on the battery in hours and minutes, which is kind of nice. If you are having a meeting and there's a problem with one of the units, it's going low, there's a battery issue, a tech can easily pull a battery out and pop a new recharged one in, and the unit will come back on in whatever state you pull the battery out of. So if the unit's off and you pop a new battery in, it stays off. If it's on when you pull the battery and put a new battery in it, it cycles power and comes right back on, okay? Goosenecks, same story here. These are all MXC model goosenecks, and so any of the popular Shure cartridges can be used. It does come with the cardioid cartridge, but if you want to use a super cardio or something else, you can buy those separately. And if you're familiar with Shure cartridges, you can just unscrew one and put the other one on. Even the gooseneck itself plays in that ball game. So you'll notice on the podium over here, we have a longer gooseneck with the gooseneck on it. A long gooseneck with the shotgun on it. Feels like it's been a long day already. If you order the gooseneck as a part number with the shotgun, it's an MXC 406. 6 for the 6 inches, and MS, by the way, at the end for mini shotgun. Okay. But yeah, other things to note here. There's a locking 10-pin connector. Okay. 5900 system was a 5-pin style connector. These are 10-pin style connectors. So if you were to pull the mic out and look at any of these units, look at the bottom of it. It is not a standard XLR type of connector that we're all used to seeing on a gooseneck. That's for multiple reasons. One is comm shield technology. We're increasing RF resistance. Also, we want to have future options there that you just can't have it on standard XLR. Okay. Where could the MXCW go? Well, certainly structured meetings that typically require control, permissions, and speak limits, quick participation, NFC card. Great, MXCW's got that covered, no problem. Even a flexible space or a mobile meeting space. We have multiple participant roles in those types of spaces. Up to 125 people might be in there. We need to have that interference detection and avoidance, that analog I/O connectivity to connect to an existing AV equipment. These are all standard requirements that we'd probably see in a flex or a mobile meeting space. MXCW covers all that, so we're good to go there. Even a historic venue or a place with limited infrastructure. This is actually really popular, that if I can at least get one network cable out into the space and put my access point out there, I'm done, I'm good. Now I just set my wireless units wherever I need them. I'm not drilling holes to hang loudspeakers or place loudspeakers in this space. I'm not cutting the floor up trying to get audio wires to different things. So this provides a great solution in those types of applications as well. The system at a glance, I'll say this is almost true. These are actually transceivers. Both the access point and the conference units are transceivers, because we have audio going one way to the access point, but we also have interpretation and or what we call the floor channel coming back that you could use for assisted listening. So then off of the access point, we could be connected up to a Dante network, and like I mentioned before, I could have other Dante devices connected to that network. I certainly could have a computer with web browser control connected, so I can get more control of the unit, and then even analog I/O right off of the unit itself for maybe a wireless mic again or some type of input there, and then a feed out to an existing sound reinforcement system or portable. More about this remote participant thing coming soon. The idea here is we can connect up our mobile phone and literally be able to call somebody and conference them right into our meeting. This is kind of a cool feature because, you know, usually you would need to do that with extra gear somehow, somewhere. So literally with a 3.5 millimeter TRRS to another 3.5 TRRS, you just connect between the unit and your phone, dial them in, and now that unit, as a side note, that unit does become a participant that is just locked into that phone. In other words, I lose the microphone part of it. But it's quick and easy to set up and use that way. If you want to do press feed overflow, this gives you a quick way to get audio distributed out to another space where otherwise maybe you didn't have a way to get a wire there or whatnot. So you just come right out of the 3.5 millimeter jack and feed your powered speaker there. We'd mentioned the software secure, embedded web applications there. There's three different views. There's a admin view, a chairman view, and a display-only view. Basically, the difference is here. The admin view gives me access to every part of the system to configure. The chairman view has access to live in-meeting controls, meaning they see a list of participants in the request to speak mode or to see who's speaking at that given time. They can turn microphones on and off. And then the display-only view gives the ability to see that list of speakers. So you might project that thing up onto a screen somewhere. You start to see speakers and whatnot. Also, the display-only view shows voting results and such. So we'll show that here in just a moment. Our wireless technology, I think everyone just, if Shure is going to build a product, it better work from a wireless standpoint. So we really wanted to be rock solid in our wireless performance to start with. And you might be saying, well, if that's the case, why did you build it in 2.4 and 5 gig, right? Well, it turns out that there are these DFS channels up in the 5 gig range. And DFS stands for Dynamic Frequency Selection. This is part of the spectrum that's typically or otherwise used by radar. But you can have unlicensed devices like this operating there as well, as long as you follow all the rules and guidelines. So we share those bands with those systems, and typically those chunks of spectrums are very wide open. So it's a great place for us to live and operate. If for some reason we need to change channels, there's actually a second scanner built into this thing that's constantly scanning the RF spectrum. And it's ranking the other channels and making decisions about which one would be the next best one to do. So those of you who are familiar with Axient, for instance, same thing applies here. And if it needs to jump and switch, it does it on its own, and it's seamless, and we don't know. It wants to live on a DFS channel first. If there's no space in DFS, it will default then to 5 gig secondary. And if there's no space there, it will drop down to 2.4. The reality is, though, on the access point, we can see all of this in the scanner settings. So this is, for instance, 2.4 here, and this is 5 gig. But you might notice there's a DFS here right at the bottom of that. These are DFS channels right here, all through here. A lot more green in there. That looks like a good place to be, right? So that's why we want to live in there. If the system has to go to this orange or yellow colored frequency, it can operate there, no problem. In fact, it can even operate on a red channel, indicating lots of traffic there. You could suffer, and you probably will suffer, distance. That's what's going to be affected. So the further away you get from the unit, or if you have the unit powered down, you can pad down the RF output on these units. If you're sitting on one of these highly trafficked channels, the further away the conference unit gets from the access point, you might experience dropouts sooner the further away it gets. Tyler and I were at NAMM down here in Anaheim a couple months ago, and that was an area that had completely red everywhere you looked. Our system still worked, and Tyler was able to walk about 150, 200 feet away before it started to drop out. So that's pretty good. Give you an idea about pricing. The access point's about $3,500. The battery charger is about $1,000, and each MXCW conference unit's around $1,400. You're going to add a mic to that for a couple $100, and it turns out to be a pretty dang affordable system when you consider the labor that you might save and or just basic speech intelligibility, right? I'm not crawling up, hanging speakers, trying to EQ them and get everybody happy that way. We get much better gain before feedback, too. I can crank the system much louder before I get feedback because I'm not worried about how far away the listener is from the loudspeaker or how far maybe a talker is from the microphone. Okay? Next up is MXC. Are there any questions on MXCW? Wow, I'm a great presenter. Nailed it all right out of the box. Okay, is this the right one? Yeah, that's the right one. So Microflex Complete is a new, built from the ground up hardware platform that's still utilizing some of our very robust and historic platform that was otherwise known as DIS. It's a company we bought several years ago. It's probably going on 7 years ago or more. And we wanted to kind of pare down the line a little bit. This is what the thing used to look like. It wasn't always that attractive. There was lots of different types of SKUs. In fact, this is only a handful of the stuff that was available. We wanted to pare that down, make it much more streamlined, maybe look a little nicer. So we're going to go through some of these things here quickly, give you an idea of the overview. Of course, we have that central control unit. As a matter of fact, it's exactly the same central control unit that you buy for that 5900, the first system we talked about. It does need to be feature license upgraded so that it knows that, hey, I got to operate with MXC devices now. But the good news is, again, if you're a rental house, if you buy a CCU and you upgrade it to operate with MXC, you can toggle it and make it be either a 5900 or an MXC unit, meaning you can have stock of both in rental and be able to use whichever system you want. You can't use them, the hardware together at the same time. It's either one or the other, but you don't have to buy two different CCUs. This thing can be expandable to control and operate 3,800 participant units. There's 4 different interpretation channels included, built-in web server. There's 8 analog outputs and 2 analog inputs. We went through that on the 5900. While it can control up to 3,800 participants, that doesn't mean it can power all of them. So typically this powers about 50 units, kind of depending upon your cable length and what type of unit it is. Obviously the LCD display screens draw more juice than like a 620 that doesn't hardly have any buttons or anything on it. There's also now redundant cabling option, and this is part of the MXC line expansion. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. As mentioned, it requires this FL6000 feature license in order to make it operate as an MXC system. What are the differences between the portable units? All of them have chairman delegate modes. They all have NFC card. They all do dual delegate and interpretation. They all have braille overlays. If you want 5-button voting, you got to use at least an MXC 630. If you want the touchscreen, you got to use the MXC 640. If you want to have an install or flush type version, you notice there's this MXC 620 and an MXC 630 here. Here we go, 630, 620. Well, look, we have another 620 and a 630, but there's a -F. These are the flush mount versions of those units. So again, both will be chairman or delegates, both NFC card, both have single delegate interpretation as well. But if you want voting, you got to step up to the 630F. If you have situations where, you know, maybe I just need a microphone here, I don't need any of the other stuff, you can add an MXC MIUFS. Sometimes these part numbers drive me a little crazy. If you want the speaker, you don't use the S, use the L. Why? Because this is the S, this is short, and this is L for long. I don't know, maybe I made that up, but I gotta find something to hang on. Anyway, they can be chairman and delegate modes, fixed speak and function buttons. They have to connect to this guy over here, the MXC MIU. This is where all the smarts live. The integrated loudspeaker exists only on this model, and when I connect these things up to the MIU unit here, this thing can be flush mounted, you know, under the lectern, usually is where these types of devices end up. I can connect up to 2 faceplates off of 1 unit. So that's kind of another cool advantage if I wanted to. Additionally, I've got an XLR input here. Maybe I need to have a microphone connected somewhere out here in the middle of the floor. I can drop one of these and have a quick way to get an input into the system, get on that DCS LAN chain. So this is a nice unit. Could be standalone just because of the XLR input, but it is absolutely required to connect with these guys. Language interpretation. Anybody in this room ever deal with language interpretation? Moving right along. Oh, I'm joking. This, in the US, we just don't have a call for this too much. I've been told we're the kings of this particular module, this interpretation unit. It's ISO 20109 certified. This is a big deal. If you're an interpreter, and someday I might want to be. I think they make lots of money. They fly first class everywhere. They eat steak every night. I mean, they sound like they really live the life. But this certification means that any interpreter can walk up to this thing and they know how to use it. They know what to expect it to do. So beyond that, I don't think we need to really discuss much else about it. Oh, there's them goosenecks again. Everything. Yes, you got it. Possibly as exciting about as anything we've talked about are these name signs, believe it or not. It's kind of funny how something so dull might be so exciting. But in fact, it is a dual-sided name sign. We have some sitting out and about. Please grab one, pick it up. It is e-paper. It's a 4-bit grayscale sign. It says it's powered via the DCS LAN, so it just goes right in line and jumpers through with all this stuff. I will comment that it does not require power once it's been written to. The only time it needs power is when I'm writing something to it. And then it's done. It's permanent. I can disconnect it. There you go. Alan left his name sign out front. And you can see how it's front and back writable. Tyler, why don't you actually, while you're at it, pull the ring off of it. Shows you can flush mount it into the desk, or it can be portable mounted. We see uses where maybe some techs will have these in their room and they'll write all the names to it because they know they have these VIPs, but they don't know where they're going to sit necessarily. And then they will push these out on a cart and set them wherever they need to go. There will be a USB application that allows you to write to it directly. Today, it at minimum requires a CCU, that single rack space device, that allows you to write to it. DCS LAN cables. Are these required? Why? Because they work. We know they work. All right. So if I'm buying up to the MXC system, I need to buy a CCU at the heart of it, right? What else do I need to buy? FL6000 to turn it into an MXC compatible system. That single feature license can get me up to 250, this is a mistake, it's not units, 250 seats. What's the difference between a unit and a seat? If I'm in dual delegate mode, where I have one unit, but I have two people talking on either side, that's 2 seats. So really, this could turn into 125 units max kind of thing, right? Or 250 seats. What if I need more than that? No problem, Chris. You told me I could get up to 3,800. Well, you add FL6000 3,800. Additional options are, I can give you 8 channels of interpretation, 16 or 31 channels. Those are all purchasable separately. The user interface comes for free. It's baked into the CCU. We've kind of been talking about that. And it provides basic system functionality without any additional software. But when you need even further control, you add Software 6000. This is a suite of softwares that allow you to configure, manage, and personalize all aspects of our conference system. The old stuff, the way it used to happen, is you would try to pick and choose. Oh, here we go again. There we go. You would have to pick and choose different software bits and pieces, but it got very confusing, and in typical Shure fashion, we're just like, let's just dumb this down. So we grouped together a bunch of this stuff, made it one SKU. So in this basic Software 6000 SKU, now you get all of this stuff, and we actually lowered the price. And then there's just a handful of additional SKUs that you may want to use. So let's kind of break that down. Again, the basic Software 6000 suite, when you buy it, you get meeting creation, meeting modes, agenda management and control. I can do messaging. I can do microphone control remotely. There's even a mimic or a synoptic layout, which you'll see in use in just a little bit, but basically it's a graphical representation of your microphone layout that a technician or somebody can use to turn on and off microphones. We can have speech time controllers, participant table, on and on and on. Each suite includes a couple other apps. One of them is the Conference Administrator application. This is the application that somebody would use prior to a meeting to completely set up everything about that meeting. They'd enter in the agenda, they would enter in any kind of voting things that need to happen, that type of thing. The CAA allows you to set up a meeting prior to. The CUA, which is a conference user application, is a thing that gets used live and in real time. So this is an application, again, that gets installed on a computer, and someone like a clerk or a mayor or somebody, a chairperson would use the CUA to run the meeting in real time. Additional add-ons, maybe you need additional CAAs, or Conference Administrator Applications, also known as, in Canada, CAA. You can add additional CUAs as well, up to 199 of those. And CDA, this is a Conference Display Application. This is something used to display things like attendance roll, speaker lists, voting results, that type of thing. So I could have up to 16 different licenses on different computers that have different purposes to display up to 16 different things, okay? Additional add-on modules, you get voting in the system recorded, meaning we could start a vote right now on whether we should all go out to lunch, and then when I stop the voting, that information is gone. It's not documented anywhere. Well, that's good enough for some folks, but if you're government, typically it needs to be recorded somehow. If that's the case, you add Software 6000-Vote. Advanced mic control, if you need up to 50 mics, you do the Advanced-50. If you need more than 50, you just order the Advanced or ADV. We also have an ESI software add-on module that allows for API control and additional streaming. So a quick system at a glance here. Again, off the DCS LAN, there's no requirement that there's any consistency. We can intermix and match stuff off of any LAN, as you see here. We do have all of our name signs in this one on LAN all by itself. But then I would connect that Ethernet cable to my network where I could have control with my web browser or Software 6000, okay? Where does this thing go? Well, certainly city councils. This is a good spot, right? The need would be something like, I need participant ID. We also need an agenda, and we need to record the vote. So MXC has us covered through that whole thing. We can do quick participant identification with the NFC card and the MXC sign, even a PIN if we want to have a PIN programmed in. Software 6000 allows us to add agenda management and control. If we want to vote here, they want to have recorded voting, great, we add the vote software. We got city councils covered. What about a larger conference space? And this isn't just international conference. Don't think of something like the UN. This could be, I think you're here with higher ed, is that correct? That's correct. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. You have to turn on your mic.
That's correct.
Thanks. You might have times where you have lots of people in the same room and they all need to talk and be heard. So in those instances, you might need lots of interpretation. I can tell you, for instance, Weight Watchers, I know is a big one. They go all around the globe and have humongous meetings, and they always broadcast them in a pile of different languages. So corporations are doing this. There are corporations that, for instance, like Mazda has entered into a joint venture with Toyota, and they've got engineers in Japan, and they got engineers in Mexico, and they got engineers in the US, and they all need to be able to have different languages and hear different languages. So they also need agenda and voting typically. So that's Software 6000, great, and they need to be able to display the agenda, so we add a CDA. Right now we can display agenda information. Even a smaller boardroom, this could be of use here. They need participant ID, they need voting but not recorded. Great, no problem, you get that for free. One channel of interpretation, well, you get 4 of them for free out of the box without any additional feature licenses. So in this scenario, we don't even need any extra software. Only the hardware that comes out of the box is able to handle this whole thing. The old days went something like, where did we start this meeting, by the way? Was it 12:45? 12:30, gotcha, we're on time. The DCS LAN calculator is something that came about because the old days, when you started doing these big loops, I had mentioned earlier, about 50 units could be on one power supply. But we don't quite know for sure because we didn't know how long that cable run is. That's a power-related issue, right? But also, our protocol actually needs to be refreshed as well. That's kind of more of a standard thing, like after about 300 feet, the protocol itself needs to be refreshed. However, every bump in the road causes potential different issues. So finally, I think all of us internally were just as excited about this as everyone else. Finally, we now have a web-based configuration tool where you can actually design your system with different components, and the thing starts to turn orange-ish color. It says danger. And then it turns red, and it's like, back up and start over again. Find a different way to do it. So this is kind of cool. It's available right now today. You can go on the website, dcslan.com. Basic map pricing here per unit. Again, it could be as inexpensive. Again, this is street price, so it could be as expensive as about $640 per unit. The CCU is about $1,700. The software stuff is here, but I think probably this slide might mean was if I have a 24 conference, I've got my CCU plus FL6000, I've got 620s, the microphone, we're roughly $23,400. If I want to add software 6000 for some control and identification, agenda management, that kind of thing, that increases me up to about $26,000. So that's not too terribly bad. It's about $1,000 per seat when you consider also you're not drilling into tables, trying to permanently mount goosenecks or something like that. Maybe that's a portable system. You're not hiring a sound engineer to try to have 24 fingers to mix everybody. You don't have some big DSP in the background trying to manage a big system either. So real reasonable. And we think these systems are especially usable here in the U.S. in lots of different applications, not just government, but higher ed, Parks and Rec, Water District. The funny part is I just don't think we spend a lot of time looking for those customers these days. If you do a search within your house, I'll bet you within about 10 miles you're going to find 20 different opportunities or more that this system might play into. We're just not used to using it here in the U.S. Cool? We now are going to get to probably the best part. This is, you've sat through